Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the film Return of the King. And we are joined by a very special guest today, one of our favorites. Alexis is back, y'all. Alexis, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me back. I absolutely love chatting with you girls. I'm Alexis. I'm the editor of Trashwire.com. I post short reviews of movies on various social media platforms, and then I'm always kind of giving my opinion of movies on Letterboxd and different things like that. So yapping about movies all the time.
Love it. Love it. We're about to yap about this iconic film together, and I'm sure we all have lots to say about this movie. Definitely. So we are actually talking about Return of the King because we are partnering and collabing with our friend over at the Revisionist Almanac podcast, Andrew Corns. He essentially takes Academy Award years and rewrites history and says, should this have won? Or maybe we've got some changes we'd like to make. And so we are going to be covering the 2003 year coming up here very soon. And this is the film that won that year. So, this is the pinnacle moment of the long journey of 2003 movies that you probably have seen on our feed. So, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary of Lord of the Rings: Return of the King?
Sure. Gandalf and Aragorn lead the world of men against Sauron's army to draw his gaze from Frodo and Sam as they approach Mount Doom with the One Ring.
The One Ring. All right. So maybe before we give our one-sentence summaries, because we'll get into that, what's all of our relationships with Lord of the Rings? Do we have posters of it plastered all across the insides of our closets? Did we grow up with this? Or are we like, oh my God, people are obsessed with this. It's pretty cool, but where do we fall on the spectrum of relationship to Lord of the Rings? Alexis, do you want to share yours?
Sure. I think I have like major nostalgia for this. This came out I think it was like had just started college or like was just starting college or something. And I remember that I didn't watch the first one in theaters because I was like, I don't know. It seems like kind of like very fantasy. And that wasn't, I don't think like a huge genre like at the time in that way. But then I watched the first one later, I think either on DVD or like it might have even been like, like a pay-per-view or something way back in the day. And then I was like, this is really good. So I saw the second and third one in the theaters, and that was such a fun experience. It was one of those things where like, I remember as I was watching it being like, I think this is like a definitive like movie theater memory that I'm going to have for a long time now. Like when I saw like Titanic or Jurassic Park or something, like, I think this is like press record in your brain because this is going to be something you're going to want to keep for a while, So I definitely have a lot of nostalgia for it because I think I just hit it at exactly the right time where I was like into film, and this came at that time. And then of course the extended editions and all the commentary tracks and making of things and learning about Weta, and it just fueled my little, cinephile brain so much. So
I love that so much. Do you remember, did you have like a packed theater watching this?
Yeah.
Was it like,
it was crazy.
Everyone showed up for this.
Totally. I went to school in DC. And so this was, I think I went to see it in like a big theater in Maryland, and it was like packed to the gills. And it was great because people were like getting so into it. Like people were cheering, people were really excited. Like at one point when Eowyn does the I am no man, I heard like 4 people in the audience be like, yes, girl. And I was like, I love this. I was like, this is literally like the most ideal conditions to watch this movie possible. It was awesome.
Oh, I love that. The communal experience of getting sucked into a story together. Oh, that's magical. Yeah. I love the like press record in your brain. Take note, Alexis.
It's like, like you're experiencing it. Yeah. You're like, okay, hold up. This is going to be something we're going to want to keep this.
Yeah. I have a friend that calls it when like a moment is happening. She's like, this is an Inside Out memory ball moment, guys. Remember it. Code it as a memory ball.
For sure.
One of those. Sarah, what's your relationship to this movie or Lord of the Rings in general?
Yeah, I also remember watching this in theaters, and I I have seen these movies like probably like half a dozen times, you know, going over to friends' houses and we watch the extended editions over the course of like a weekend or whatever. You know, that whole thing. We've done all that. I really like the like intricacies of this world. I have been meaning
Mm.
for years to read the books though,
Yes.
and I just have not gotten around to it though. So this rewatching Return of the King has like once again re-upped that like, man, you really need to read these books because they're quite good and I just need to make time for it. But yeah, really enjoy this world, and just being steeped in this again was just a lot of fun.
Yes, yes. Uh, Alexa, did you read the books yet?
I did. That was back,
Okay.
when I was a college kid and could focus on things, and now my
Yeah.
brain has disappeared. That was pre-social media. Now it's just
Yeah.
like my attention span is ruined. But back
We're like
then,
little hamsters.
I could read them. And I do remember
Hmm.
that I really liked them. And I remember like I just breezed through them
Wow.
back then,
Okay.
which I'm like, I think now it would probably take me like 2 years to try to read a book. But like that's how bad my brain has gotten. But back then, I really enjoyed it.
Well, if it's a comfort to anybody, I had this grand plan at the start of this year to read all of them, like The Hobbit and all three, before we did Return of the King, because we knew we were going to do this at the end of the year. And I've made it about halfway through The Hobbit, so we're doing great, y'all. But
I mean, honestly, in today's day and
slowly,
age, that's an enormous accomplishment.
you know.
You know, being able to pay attention
um,
to anything for more than about 10 minutes, huge.
Right, right. I know. It's tough, but yeah, I know that people that um love the books and get to watch this and have it come to life, it's kind of a special experience too in the orders that people have experienced this movie in. Um I, coming from an immigrant family home, was like living under a rock for a lot of pop culture stuff. Like I watched Star Wars really late in life. I watched a lot of like iconic IP really late in life. There's a lot of gaps still to fill. So I didn't watch this movie until much, much later with my family over Christmas, and we binged all of them in one go.
Nice.
At the towards the end of it, my dad is like tapping out. He's like, I don't know who any of these people are. Like, what's the dude with the flowy thing? Like, I don't know. Um, but it was a really cool experience watching the entire arc all in one go over the course of several days and like steep in this world. It's also how I did Star Wars, so that's kind of cool. You just really get sucked in. And so I think that was really informative for my first time watching this movie, is like it was the big epic thing of this long journey that I got to experience. So honestly, in this most recent watch, I went to YouTube and typed in, give me the summary videos of the first two so I know where the heck we're picking up on, because I remember they really flow into each other and you kind of pick up where you left off. So yeah, watch this later in life. I really loved it. And similar to you, Sarah, I was like, I need to read these books now because I've heard there's just so much richness in the backstories and the lore that makes this even better than it already is. So okay, let's dive in. Let's talk about Return of the King. We're going to start off with our one sentence summaries in movies in this tradition. Alexis, what is your one sentence summary for Lord of the Rings,
Mine
Return of
is
the King?
it's not good, but mine is mine is maybe the real Return of the King was the fellowship we made along the way.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Love it. Yes, yes, yes. So good. So good. Sarah, what is your one sentence summary for Return of the King?
Mine is, when fighting forces of darkness, coalition building is essential.
Perhaps
Nice.
a fellowship in some form, you know?
You know,
That.
just an idea.
My one sentence summary is a little of my thesis too, but it's Sam's story, and we're all just heroes in it.
Mm-hmm. Honestly,
Yeah.
though,
Very true.
you're not wrong.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive in. We're going to talk about our kind of high level thoughts about Return of the King. We won't spoil the movie quite yet, but if you were like me and you need to fill in some of your pop culture gaps and iconic franchise gaps, go watch many hours of this world. I don't even know how to sign this homework. I'm like, do you have like 8 hours of your life? Cool. Now go watch like the first two movies in this movie. But we are going to share our thoughts about Return of the King at a high level right now. And I'm actually also curious, I always ask this question in this most recent watch. What are some of the things that also really like maybe like were highlighted to you or came to the surface more that you didn't realize or notice all those other times watching this? So, Alexis, curious your thoughts about Return of the King and kind of the most recent watch experience.
Yeah. I think like to me this is such a perfect example of like a great conclusion to a trilogy.
Mm.
I think we're kind of in this period now where everything has to lead into something else. And so nothing really ends. Like a lot of the big
Mm.
franchise movies now are designed to leave like a breadcrumb or leave a door open or
Yeah.
leave something for the inevitable next one or the inevitable prequel or
Mm.
the inevitable whatever. And I like that this felt like an actual conclusion. Like these three movies together really feel like they are like, this is a beginning, middle, and end, and that is it. And that's what we're doing, you know? So that part of it felt really refreshing to me in this watch. I also think that, like these movies in general, but especially this one, there's a real like sort of sincerity and earnestness that's almost like there's like a sappiness or a corniness to it that feels so different from like the quippy kind of snarky blockbusters now. And that also felt really different where I was like, I wonder how like if you showed this to like a 12-year-old right now, would they find this like slow and boring and cheesy because of like what
Mm.
they've seen before? Or would they really get into this and like buy into that like real sincerity that this movie has? So I was kind of curious on rewatch. I was like, I like an actual movie that ends and a movie that is so like deeply
Ernest.
sincere in its sort of portrayal that I was like, look at this. This feels so different. And it feels like dated, but in like a good way. You know, it's like, oh, nostalgia, you know?
So good. That's a fabulous point because the money making machines now really do leave. Even if they end this storyline, there's like the one character where you're like, I know you're waiting to do something with that one character. And this movie truly ends with the closed door of the hobbit hole, you know, like Sam closes the door. We don't need to do more. I mean, it's ironic because we had like Rings of Power or something come out this year. So they're doing more with it, but the lack of like planfulness of it feels nice. What a
Totally.
treat. You
Yeah.
know, actually ending a story.
A real conclusion in
Mm,
this economy?
Right? Yeah, because
yeah.
I mean, ending things is hard. I mean, look at TV.
Yes.
We see shows just going on for years and years and years when they should have ended seasons ago because endings are so hard. So, like you,
Yeah.
Alexis, I was really struck by like, oh, this is a conclusion. We are done. There are like 5 different endings in this movie, but it's because we needed to wrap up every single one of these different storylines. So I also really appreciated that like we're done. Concluded. We have taken years to conclude this saga, but we are officially done. The other thing that I was really impressed by upon rewatch, because I most recently watched 1 and 2 like a year ago ish.
Oh,
But I didn't watch 3. I only watched 1 and 2. We didn't
why?
we didn't finish the trilogy just because of
Oh,
reasons.
time.
And so they were like kind of hazy in my brain, but I did not do my homework like you did, Jen, and watch a YouTube video. I was like, I'm just going to go into this and we're just going to catch up and it's going to be fine. And honestly, it was. Like I was really impressed by the
Mm,
fact that these movies generally, but also this one specifically, is able to take all of this lore. There's so much
yeah.
intricacy and depth in the books that I have not read, but I have heard from friends who have. There's so much like backstory to everything, and
Mm,
everything is so rich and complex and all of this. And they were able to distill it down into this movie form. And even if you miss all of that lore stuff, you're still able to follow. You know your general folks and like what they're doing. You get the gist of the fight that we're on, and that's all you need. And if you know all of that backstory stuff, it just like enhances your experience, but it's not necessary. And so just how impressive it is to take such a dense and beloved work like The Lord of the Rings and adapt it into a movie like this so that it is accessible for people who have not read the books and enjoyable for people who have. Like I was just re-impressed with that all over again upon this rewatch.
that's so
For
good.
sure.
It seems like it was I mean, a truly an impossible task to still out the right amount of spectacle while also keeping that spectacle simple enough for us to get it. Like, okay, we're defending the city. We know, we understand where everything is. There's all these big bad little ant orcs surrounding it, and we need to defend this. Like, it's a simple concept, honestly. And even if you don't know whose side anybody's on, you're like, we need to defend the really pretty white city, like that, like the visuals of that really simplify it. But then also distilling out the emotional storylines for so many characters, I was also really impressed by this watch. Like every character, because everyone has their like beloved ones, gets a moment to shine, and it does in a way that doesn't feel like it's lacking focus, but it comes at the right moment. So like simple examples, Legolas gets this really beautiful, elegant moment of triumph and glory. Like every character has a moment where they come to fruition, they come to shine, and then they fade in the background, and we never really see what their ending is. But that's okay because we're satiated. I was really impressed this watch and really noticing the pacing, because there's essentially three parallel storylines that are happening all at once, and then within each place there's like two or three sub storylines. And when the film chooses to cut to whom, I thought was so strategically done. And just when you're forgetting about, oh, our other friends over there doing an adventure, it would bring us back to them. But there was a moment of catharsis at every kind of sub chapter of the story that it felt right to cut away now. Like, okay, I'm satiated here. Show me somebody else now. Particularly, I was noting the choice to wait until the hour 15 mark before we even get much of Aragorn at all. He has a big, great, epic moment at the end there, but I'm like, he's not in the first entire third of this movie, and I think that's smart for us to like really accelerate his storyline in the second half of the movie instead of spending too much time at the beginning that we kind of get like exhausted by that whole arc. And so just the pacing and when to cut to whom, I thought was so well done in this movie, and hard to do when you were balancing like five different storylines all at once.
Yeah, fully agree. There are so many different plots that all have to be wrapped up in
Yeah.
one movie here, and it's like I thought about that as well, where I was like, wow, look at this. Like, look how we're cutting back and forth, and we're getting like even just like a 2 minute like emotional moment, and then we're cutting to like something with action, or we're cutting to whatever. And at no point does it feel like overwhelming. At no point does it feel like the pace breaks. It's just this really great balance of hitting the emotional beats you need to hit while still propelling the plot and keeping everything moving. And I was kind of like, this is a miracle, isn't it? Like as I was watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the other part of this that I think is really impressive is the majority of the film is like a really long battle that
Mhm.
happens. Like
Yeah.
that
So
is a
true.
good chunk of this movie. But they keep bringing new elements to the battle, or
Yeah.
all of those cutting away to all of these other characters that are somehow related to the plot. That gives us breaks from the battle, and then we see new characters are introduced to it, or a new foe shows up, and so there's just this constant like reshifting of the game board almost. So even though a lot of it is just this one battle back and forth and trying to defend the city, it doesn't feel stale because we're constantly seeing new things introduced, seeing new creatures introduced, new powers introduced, all of this.
Mm.
And then every once in a while, we'll go check on like Frodo and Sam, or we'll go see what this group is doing over here. And I loved that variety, because I am that person in a movie. You give me a battle scene and I check out after a while because I'm like, okay, can we just like keep it moving? Can we do something else here? But I think because of all that variety, I was able to stay engaged in what in a different movie I might be like, okay, I want to go scroll on my phone instead of watching this. But in Return of the King, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? So just again, that like pacing and that structure is just spot on, even for our, adult brains that don't know how to focus on anything.
Totally. I kept thinking about that as well. Like, there was something SS Rajamouli said about like when you have action without emotion, And it's kind of like George Lucas's, a special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing. It's like, I think this is such a perfect example of this has the spectacle, and it is such a flex for Weta to be like, check out this stuff that we can do that literally like no one could even fathom at that time period. But then also to ground that in emotional moments where you care about any of that stuff happening. I think that's where I'm with you. I get a lot of that like battle fatigue in action movies now, because it starts and you're like, there are no stakes, there are no consequences. This is just a big opportunity. It's like a very cool VFX show reel, but like it's not, you don't like feel invested. And I think this is such a perfect example of like, you get all that spectacle, but you also care why any of these things are happening to these people, and are they going to make it out? And you want them to succeed. So that to me is like, this is where I'm like, this is a miracle.
It really is. I mean, we'll do a quick spoiler here so we can dive into a lot of the kind of choices made in that like third act, I would say, which is a difficult task to do, to like end like such an iconic trilogy. But that third act, I think, is so strong. So if you haven't seen Return of the King, spoiler alert, we're diving fully in. This is iconic franchise. You should go in as blind as you can if pop culture hasn't ruined it for you to totally yet. I think what's also really notable about that like ending final battle sequence is that we're constantly seeing characters that we know make choices within the battle sequence that are significant, whereas like a lot of the final battle sequences that we see now are just like clashes of weapons against each other for like too long, and there's a law of diminishing return. But amidst the battle sequence, we get to see like Merry and Pippin have their moments to like save the day, and we feel invested in the little guys that get to have their moment of glory. We get to see Eowyn like really show up and protect her uncle, and for her uncle, being here is like an act of choosing to come alongside and like show up for his allies, which is a whole arc for him over the storyline. So I just think it's cool that like in the middle of like all the chaos and the yelling and the clashing of like spears, there's these moments where characters making like really significant decisions that have also like felt satisfying to see them come into their own in some way. And that's also probably why that ending long battle sequence is so exciting, because we get to see like these characters are now pressed, and what they choose to do in a battle sequence says so much about the final growth moment for them. And I feel like that was really cool to see, is so many of these characters make really pivotal choices.
Fully agree. Yeah, there's like a payoff to everyone's sort of story arc, and then there's a payoff within the like actual like action and battle itself. I mean, the tide of the battle turns like 15 times, and it never feels like they're just kind of trying to extend the battle. It feels like these things are happening because of choices. And I think that's like so impressive. It's the idea of like, well, a character makes a decision, and the decision has an impact on both like, what happens and maybe another character. And the character's decisions are made based on motivations that we like have learned about them in previous movies. It's like the payoff, really. It's like, that's, I think, we've used the word satisfying a lot, and I think that's exactly what it is. It's a really narratively satisfying payoff. And I think that's so it feels rare. And I think that was part of, to me, why this is such an amazing film, is it's like, look at the way that everything concludes and pays off and finishes in a satisfying way. So impressive.
And for so many different characters. Like, I know that we've already talked about this, that there's a lot of characters, but there are so many characters that we see doing this. And again, it doesn't feel muddled. It doesn't feel confusing. We understand their desires and their goals across like a dozen plus characters. Like, how do you do that and have it make sense and not feel overwhelming and have the spectacle on top of that? Like, this is a really impressive film, just the way that it's written. And then you add in all of great performances, beautiful visual effects, all the other things. That's also great. Like, man, but the writing is what really grounds this, and I think helps make this as iconic as it is, because everything is just paced so well, and we're so invested in each individual person. And even seeing like Mary and Pippin are really like focal in this film, and I was really focused on them this time.
Mm.
And they have like similar desires and similar goals, and they kind of
Yes.
take similar paths but in different contexts, which I think is really interesting. But it's also distinct between the two. They're not the same character either, and their
Mm.
goals, while similar, and their choices, while similar, they're also distinct. And so I love even these like subtle differences, that everybody has a different goal or a different motivation or a different personality across a dozen plus characters, and we know each one distinctly. And that is, wow, what an accomplishment.
Yeah, I don't know how they did this. I think this episode of us being like, how did they do this? I mean, we haven't even talked about like the technical aspects and all of that, like the filmmaking choices, but just sheerly taking such a big story at this scale and to put it to the screen in a way that structurally feels like it makes sense, and like kind of the editorial choices of what to keep in, what to keep out, like this, even the like, Sarah, I think you alluded to this, like the 17 different endings that we get, like all feel necessary. And I mean, maybe some might argue like, we could cut some of the moments, but like even the choice to end the story back in the Shire with Sam and his family and the closing of the Hobbit hole door, it's like the film is allowing us to come back home and feel like we have been changed, but we're not, it's not this grand, like, we saved the world. It's actually a small story about people and all of the people in and the characters that are going back to their homes, changed, forever changed by the adventures and what they did here. But we're back home now, and choosing to end that there too, I think also helps us like come out of this epic story and come back to like our little homes and our normal context, and feeling that, I mean, what makes Lord of the Rings so magical, which is that like we are all able to and have capacity to be heroes in our own little worlds in our own ways, and care for the people around us. And I think that was so intentional too, versus you end with big battle sequence, big celebration, and ending on such a massive like macro scale, and how you're supposed to come out of that. It's maybe exciting and satisfying, but there's a little bit more needed. And the film's intuition to know this needs to end back home. And then as you leave the theater, you can kind of like transition us out from like this big scale back to our little parking lots where we go back to our cars. I think like that transition for the viewer to come out of the story was also such an intentionally and like well landed emotional beat for this movie to transition us out.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's almost like a lovely little victory lap of like, remember how we started in the Shire and it was all simple,
Yeah.
and it was like, remember the first movie? And then you get like, it's like, look where we've been through this. And then it's like, all right, back here. Remember this? It's a nice little way for us as an audience to be like, damn, this movie really, like, this trilogy accomplished so much. And like, look where it started. It's a great little reminder too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also love, and you see this kind of like throughout the film, is there's this like sobriety about what they're doing, and it feels, this is going to sound silly to say about a fantasy movie, but it feels very down to earth. Like a lot of what we're seeing these characters doing, like when they're going into war, they know that they're going into war and there's a high likelihood that they will die. And it is somber, it is sad. You don't see this like, yeah, we're going off to war and we're going to kill all, like, you don't see that. That's not the vibe. And so I love that kind of like grounding in reality that you see. It sounds so stupid to say about a fantasy movie and wizards and stuff, but it really does feel grounded. And so I love that ending, that they go on this massive adventure, but they come back home, and it feels so right and natural. And like you guys have said, they have changed and they bring that change with them. And so I love that little ending where the four hobbits are sitting at a table alone, just not talking, and they're just there with their glasses and like, what do we do? Like, we're back home, we're back in our normal space, everything around us is as we imagined, this is where we have wanted to be, but now we are different. So like, what do what do we do? And so I love, it's obviously hopeful and lovely, and we love that they all got back, but I love that there's this little bit of a complication as well of like, what do you do when you have left and you have changed and then you come back? And there's that tension there that we feel. And it's not like too much, but it just, it feels so real and natural, and something that like we all experience as humans that we get to see these hobbits experiencing as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like stakes, it's, and not just like these people are going into battle knowing that they are vulnerable. They're not like, invincible. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, and now you've won, but you're still not the same as you were before, So even within victory, there are stakes in terms of like, you can't just go back and have a pint at the Prancing Pony in the way you would before, it's like, things are going to be different, and I think that's it's like the emotional resonance of like, it makes you reflect on the journey as a whole. And it's not just a series of plot points and, fetch quests and accomplishments. It's an emotional journey as well. And that I think is part of why it's so satisfying.
Yeah, and I think this film is so efficient and kind of using a lot of those like filmmaking components with the efficiency of a few shots to get us to understand the emotions of a moment. So one of the characters that I was really struck by how quickly the film was able to get me to just like absolutely fall in love with him and buy into him is Faramir, because I forgot about Faramir, and honestly he's mentioned like once or twice in the like short summary videos that I watched. So I was like, oh, okay, who's this dude? Boromir's brother. Cool. But in that first battle sequence when we meet him, there's a shot that cuts to him where he's up against the wall. He hears orcs coming through and he knows he has to jump in front of them and just start going at it. And you can see the fear in his eyes, and he almost like musters up the courage within himself to like be like, oh, okay, we got to do this because honor and valor, And so that efficiency and like you were saying, Sarah, the sobriety of like these characters are like, we really feel like they know that they might die and get slashed by an orc at any moment, but they're choosing to do this. Later, I mean, I was already invested in him there. I was like, okay, you're a whole real person. I can relate to you. But that whole sequence with his father, it's honestly like a couple of minutes on screen, but the understanding and that conversation he has with his father around like, you wished that I was the one that died and Boromir was still here. And his father says yes. And the look on his face, just a short shot. And we feel the weight of what this kid has had to walk through his entire life. And so, again, the action associated with the emotion when he's riding off into battle, into that suicide campaign, like we feel like, okay, we need to defend Gondor, yes. But we're like, no, but this is also this man choosing to honor his father in this way, even at the pain to himself. And like all of that is baked in when we see those horses charging, that like shot of the line of the horses. We're like, there's so much more to it. And I think that's like one of many examples of sequences in this film where there's action happening and it's furthering the like cognitive plot that we know of like, okay, we need to defend Gondor. But the emotions of the characters that are riding to battle are different every time at every moment. And for Faramir, this means something different. And we care about him. And so therefore, like all of that action feels significant all of a sudden, instead of just like, yeah, we need to defend the city. That's very pretty. There's more to it than that. Oh, that scene rips my heart and my chest.
That's the thing. I mean, this movie has some of the most impressive action of that era. And I mean, like, still very impressive action, like, even, 20 years down the road. But it's like, it also has these emotional beats, and that's what makes it so resonant. That's what makes it where you think about it. And I think this is why these movies are such classic movies even now, is because yes, you think of like, oh man, wasn't it cool when like Legolas took down the elephant or whatever? But it's like, but yeah, you also think about like, oh, wasn't it heartbreaking, everything with Faramir? Like those are the parts. Even, I mean, Frodo and Sam, obviously I'm glad to be with you, Samwise Gamgee, at the end of all things. Like that's beautiful, things like that. You just remember them because you care. We've been on this whole journey and we've seen all this spectacle, but we care about the spectacle. We care about the characters, and that's so impressive.
Yeah, because it's not spectacle for spectacle's sake, but like you said, Alexis, it's all grounded in the emotion and these characters, and that's really who we're following. Like, obviously we're on this quest to, destroy the ring. Great, love it, cool. But really, we're hanging out with our guys and seeing these characters as they are going on this impossible journey, and the way that they all are stretched and pushed and having to make really hard decisions, and that pressing of like, who are you, and we really see like what comes out of them when they're put in these dangerous and impossible situations. And really, like, that is the movie, and all of the spectacle is just the cool stuff around it that we get to watch, which is great and fun, and I love it. But at the heart of it is really that character journey for all of these different characters, and we just, man, that stays with you, going with these characters, and you feel like you have been on this journey with them too.
I'm intrigued by one of the things you said earlier, Alexis, which is like the kind of earnestness and sincerity of this movie, and how different that is from a lot of blockbusters we see today. Because there's moments of humor, there's moments of like levity in this film. Gimli is a great source of a lot of that, but on the whole, I was like, oh, there's not as much in here as I would have thought or I would have expected. And it feels like all of these characters really feel like they are fighting for the future of Middle Earth. And while there's moments of like lightness, it's not necessarily that like silly jokey type of humor that we'll get in like a Marvel film as they're preparing for like saving humanity. They're still cracking jokes like we're hanging out at the pub, but that's not in this movie. And I think that's a really fascinating like tonal choice. It's very 2000s too. But it is such a difference in blockbusters and perhaps like the styles and preferences that the studios seem to want to give us today. And I'm curious, yeah, any thoughts that we had around that choice, because it is notable, and I was kind of surprised by it every time. Like when Ghibli would make like a somewhat tangentially funny comment, I'm like, oh, I forgot that that's a thing that happens in movies now, that we need to laugh. And I'm like, I actually didn't even crave it though in this film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's like an old school quality to this where it's like movies, I think like it's almost like now it feels like they're like almost like embarrassed to be very earnest. And I think that they're worried that people will be like, oh God, people are gonna think this is corny. Undercut it with a quip, you know? Like we have a moment of sincerity, but have somebody be like, that happened or whatever, like have somebody make a joke about it, Whereas I think in this, they're like, no, these people are fighting the ultimate evil, and they're willing to sacrifice their lives, and they've bonded and made this friendship over the past 3 movies, and we're paying this off now, and it's going to be very dramatic, and that's how it's going to be. I it was funny, that was the thing that I found the most interesting looking back at this, was just how tonally different that is, the sort of seriousness to this, and that commitment to that I was like, isn't that strange? Like, even I think you could take something like Avatar. I mean,
Yeah.
those movies aim to be very like, he doesn't care about like if you think it's corny, if you think it's what he's like, whatever, man. Like, I really don't care. I'm making the movie I want to make, and
Yeah.
good on him for that. But I think so much of it now, you can feel the like studio meddling. You can feel the this needs to work for all these different groups, and well, what are our teenagers going to think it's too sincere, and our family audience is going to want to see it, and you have to like achieve so much that you can't really please anybody. Whereas I feel like this was kind of in this weird window where it was like before social media, and it was like before a lot of these things where it's like you could just make a really sincere, earnest movie. You could have somebody put like their heart and soul into it, like with Peter Jackson, and you could just be like, here's the movie, and it's really good, and everybody wants to see it, and everybody loves it. And it's like, wow, like what a time.
Yeah. That probably is what is also like just tugs at our heartstrings every time with a film series like this, is that I think that my hot take is that I think that we all crave that earnestness and sincerity. And like the last few years especially, like you just see this jadedness. It's seeped into like all of the stories that we're telling right now too. It's just this like cynicism that's packaged and like surrounded by this like cotton candy spark like sprinkle layer, because like, you know, to be really cynical is like really depressing. So like we'll package it to make it a little bit more fun, but there's such a jadedness in the types of stories we tell, the types of villains we write, like everything. And even like our protagonists like kind of have been like hardened by life, you know, those are the ones that we love these days. And I don't know, there's something about this that just like warms our little hearts, and we can go back to a time where things were a little bit simpler. And I think that's also why we're seeing this resurgence of so many of these remakes of classic stories from like the 80s to the 2000s, and revisiting these pieces of IP that felt like simpler, easier times where we could indulge in emotion and not feel like we have to cut away with something else. You know, Gandalf can give a really cheesy line and we're going to feel every bit of it because it's true and Gandalf is always right, you know? And I think there's something that like touches on the human heart in a way that perhaps we all crave, but we don't feel like safe to indulge in the same way now because of the state of the world right now. And I think our art reflects that quite significantly. Yeah.
Fully agree.
And I think it's also just the characters themselves. Like I mean, hobbits. Like you can't have like a cynical, quippy hobbit. Like I'm sure that you could do it and you could make it work, but like that's not the vibe. They live in these cute little hobbit holes. Like, come on. It's just dripping with earnestness, and we love them for it. So I think it's also just these characters and who they are, because even
Yeah.
the jokes that they make, because like Pippin and Merry got jokes, Gimli's got jokes, like there are those, you know, strewn about the movie, and they all feel natural because it feels right for the character. You're not going to see Pippin making a Gimli joke because that just wouldn't work. And so I love that it's so well integrated so that when we need a moment of levity or lightness, you know, the correct character provides that in a way that doesn't take you out of the film. And then I mean, it's the same thing with these deep emotional moments too, because they all feel right for the characters. They don't feel artificially made because, oh, we need an emotional beat here. But it's like, no, this character is going through a lot, so let's actually sit in this emotion for a hot second before we go on to the next battle thing. And we need those moments, and we need those emotional moments too, because that's part of the reason why we watch movies, is for these, you know, empathetic experiences, so that we can like step into the shoes of a character and feel what the character is feeling. And I feel like the Return of the King does that just so well. We know what they're all feeling, what they're all thinking, and you know, we welcome those moments of jokes. We welcome those moments of like tonal shift, because they all come at the right time, as we're just kind of living in this little world for a little while.
Yeah, like you're not gonna see like Aragorn doing sarcastic quips, you know? Like it's just like that wouldn't fit his character at all. So it's like, no, like like we can have comedy moments with Merry and Pip. We can have comedy moments with Gimli and Legolas and stuff, but it's like, but not everybody needs to be like a quipping machine all the time, you know?
Honestly, there's a moment where we're in the middle of the big final battle sequence, right? And typically our like moment to create levity in a film today would be like make a funny moment with somebody. And I think in this movie the equivalent is Gandalf describing like the afterlife and heaven to to Pippin. Like that was the thing, is like, oh, let's cut away to have this sweet moment for Gandalf to help ease Pippin's fears. That was our moment of levity. You know, so it's like the tones are shifting from big scary battle sequence high action to soft tender moment versus big high action battle sequence and funny moment. And I think that's the difference. It's like we have those moments time and time again throughout this film where we're cutting to something tender versus necessarily something funny. And maybe some of those tender moments are funny with Gimli and like Legolas and Gimli choosing to tell Aragorn like, nah man, like you're not going alone, you know, that. But it's not I don't know. I think that I often feel in a lot of movies today that like whiplash of tones feels wrong sometimes. I'm like, these characters wouldn't do that in a big final battle sequence, you know? They're not making jokes as they're trying to like survive. So it kind of takes me out a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, whatever, got back into the story. But I think that choice of cutting to what flavor of tone when you need a light moment is also notable, different.
Yeah, that's those like stakes where now you have a big action moment and tensions are high and what's going to happen to our heroes, and then it's like little jokey quippy moment. Whereas with this, it's like tensions are high, what's going to happen to our heroes? They think they might die, and Gandalf's like, "Hey man, it's cool cuz the afterlife's great." And it's like that's the relief moment instead of like a quippy joke. It's like it's all right if we die, you know? Like it's a
Green
comfort thing, you know?
pastures. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like,
The
that's
white
so
shores.
different. Yeah, I feel like it's almost like the level of almost like cheesiness is like it would be so easy to be like, "Ugh, cringe," but it's like this movie is like not afraid to be cringe in that sense. It's like,
Yes.
"No, I'm gonna be very like sincere and warm and a
Yeah.
little bit corny, but it's gonna fit for the emotion of this scene." And it's corny because the characters are like gonna die potentially.
Yeah.
Like they don't feel invulnerable. They don't feel like, yeah, just another battle that we're doing. It's like, no,
Mhm.
this is the battle. You know,
Mhm.
like the stakes are high. They don't need quips, they need comfort, they need emotion, they need the bonding that they have and caring about each other and those things within the big action moments, you know?
Yeah. So
I
good.
think I think the other piece of it too is that, you know, a central theme of this film is hope. And hope can feel cheesy and corny. And so I think that's just part of it. Like they're in this moment of they're in an impossible battle against pure evil, and they are trying to like maintain just a sliver of hope. Like this plan should not have worked, really. Like, it was impossible odds, an impossible mission, a ragtag group that shouldn't have been able to do this. And so I love that throughout this film, it's this constant reminder of the importance of hope and like the men needing to be encouraged to keep going and
Yes.
constantly like feeling this like despair creeping in, and then you just have this glimmer of hope, so then you can keep going forward to like the next thing, the next scene, which just it lends itself to that like kind of corniness, but you need that. Like we couldn't make this movie today. We just couldn't.
Totally.
Like it wouldn't work. So I think you're right, Alexis, that this really does feel like a miracle movie. It came at just the right time when you know our technology was good enough to create these really fantastic visuals, but it wasn't like so far to where you know we are where we are today. So it's just this sweet spot where just kind of everything collided to create this film that really does feel so unique, and it is so hopeful, and it is cheesy at times, but we don't care because we are invested. And you know sometimes you need a little hope, and the Return of the King provides that for sure.
Yeah, it's like if hope is cringe, then I'm fine with being cringe, you know?
Yes. Yes. I think it also goes back to how the screenwriting and the filmmaking components are coming together perfectly too. I think, like for example, that Gandalf moment, they could have written that to be a few scenes earlier, you know, like and maybe when they're preparing for battle, but like the choice to have it right as the orcs are about to infiltrate is the right moment for that. Another example is the Black Gate scene and the speech from Aragorn. Oh, I literally was like, I can't wait for this moment. Like I saw the Black Gate, I was like, let's go. I love this scene so much. But the choice to have from a cinematography perspective, it's like we see the POV shots of the men and we see Aragorn give most of the speech through almost like the spears of the rows of men before you. So you feel like you're in this throng of men that are trying to figure out how they're going to tackle this like army of orcs that you've already seen coming at you too, you know? So for like the timing for when Aragorn gives the speech and the way that it's shot too, I think also lend itself for us to like, even if we think it's cringe, you know, honestly, I'm like, give yourself over to it. And the filmmaking sucks us in that way, which I think helps that the right like timing and forces of all of those ingredients come together for those moments to actually go from being cheesy to like, oh, this is really landing and I'm buying every bit of this. So I think it's cool to see the way that like from the cinematography, the music, the screenwriting, timing, it is all working together well for this to be kind of this like stroke of genius, this miracle of a movie that really works in all its earnestness.
Yeah, to be able to like sort of captain a ship of this size and make it work is like that's the kind of thing I see these filmmakers that make these enormous movies like this, or like with James Cameron or with SS Rajamouli or with these different people, and I just think like the amount of stress that I would feel even imagining an idea like that. I'm like, I can't manage like, 4,000 people who are like building miniatures and like rendering VFX, and you have to make like every decision. And it's just like, oh my God, I'm going to have a panic attack thinking about it. And I don't know how they do it. It's like a weird level of mad genius, but I'm like,
Yeah.
good on them because I love watching what they make,
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking about while, like, watching this is just, like, I mean, there's a reason why the credits is, like, many, 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 many minutes long, but just the sheer size and spectacle of this, like,
Yeah.
I'm obviously, like, the battle sequences, but, like, you think through all of these different characters that you're managing. You have like costumes for everybody. You have
Oh my
props for
gosh.
everybody. You have, all of these
Yeah.
different locations that you're fighting in. Not to mention, the camera trickery, with having adult men playing hobbits and having, like a very tall man playing Gimli. Like all of these different things and making sure that the heights are correct and all of that and your camera stuff and the mod, like I just, as I was watching, I just was trying to like take inventory in my brain and I was just like, how did this happen? Like this is insane. Just the size of this is wow, just unfathomable. Even today, like this was made 20 years ago and they were able to accomplish all of this with so much detail and intricacy and it still looks really good 20 years later and that's wild to me. There's so many ways that this could have gone wrong and probably should have gone wrong, but it didn't. And I'm not sure how that happens.
Yeah,
Like,
the
wow.
how this movie exists is
It's
like
a whole
is
nother.
just fascinating on its own, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also impressed at how well it's aged too visually. Uh, Obviously there's some things where we clearly are like, that's technology has evolved over time, but we don't care. We don't care. We want to see the Witch King fly on a dragon. Yeah, cool. Like and there's just so much suspension of a disbelief in some of the moments because they spent the time to do all of the makeup and the effects and the props and the production design. Just the design of so many of the different types of orcs I thought was so cool to see. And that's a whole department, I'm sure, of like, your job is orc design and make them look interesting and diverse and yet also coherent. Like all of those things are working well. And so I think the pairing of things that feel really grounded in the props and the sets paired with some of the big sweeping visuals, I think our brains just kind of can meld them together. Whereas I think a lot of films today err on the side of we'll just make it in post. And I think
Totally.
it's harder for us to like buy in as much when you don't have like real spears and things clanging together, and you're kind of hand waving a lot of that. So just shout out to the amount of time and effort put into this film. I've heard this film compared a lot to the Ben-Hur, the original Ben-Hur, and just like the amount of investment to create everything and how well that did pay off for the success of the film landing and feeling as epic and grand as it does.
Yeah, totally. There really is something, I mean, all of those details, like, the orc design. I mean, making like all the chainmail being made, like every weapon, everything. And then like, because you have all those things that are actually there, when you supplement things with CG, it's like a thing that's there. Or like, with the infamous bigatures, where it's like you have these enormous miniatures that are incredibly detailed in a way that you probably would never have been able to accomplish with CG back then. So it holds up now because, yeah, you could make that with CG now, but back then they just made it for real, and it's a real prop that they shot, or it's a real thing that they did. So it just automatically feels like, it's never going to feel that dated because it's not as reliant on technology. It's reliant on like the like movie magic that has worked for 100 years, So those kind of, to me, it's almost like timeless in a way. There are a couple things where you're like, yeah, maybe the lighting could be better on this CG thing or whatever. But the moments where you have character things going on, those are, a lot of that is just like practical stuff. And it really like continues to resonate and land, and you can still feel very attached to it.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, and the way that the CG is like integrated in, you'll have a shot with something that's computer generated, and then you'll go back to practical effects, and then you'll go back to something that's computer generated. And I love that. We don't spend a ton of time just on, this completely CGI thing. We're always cutting back and forth between seeing people actually doing these things and seeing the practical effects, and then the CGI is just a nice little thing to like over top, like lay over top of it. It's an accompaniment. It's not like the main meal. And I think that also, to your point, Alexis, helps make this so it holds up, and it probably will continue to hold up too, because of the way that it was used so strategically throughout the film.
Yeah, there's a real thoughtfulness when you can't, like the fix it in post mentality has made it where you don't have to be as thoughtful about like, okay, but where is the camera? And, what is the costume and what is whatever? Cause it's like, I don't know, we'll just put it all together later. But you have to be so much more thoughtful when you're like, no, the camera has to be here. And then that means this person has to be here. So this has to be in front, and that, like, you just have to think it through. And it makes it where, like, because you've had to put a lot of thought into the shots, they better be what you want them to be. They better say what you want them to say. And I think that's, I wish there was more of that. I think you see that more in like smaller budgets because they have to, but a lot of the huge budget films now, it is kind of like, well, we could make the whole shot later in post. Like when you look about the Avengers costumes, where it's like, oh, none of those costumes were there. They just made them later. And you're like, couldn't you have just made them though? Like, it seems like you could have just decided that and made them,
The story, you can't fool us. You know what I mean? Like, we as humans and the human eye knows and can feel the difference. I think that's part of why Mad Max Fury Road is like just one of the greatest films of the century. Is they put in the time and energy and investment and money, and it paid off. It really paid off. But when that feels like such a big risk, it's harder for a studio to be like, oh, we don't know if this is going to perform well or not. But you can't fool us, and we can feel the difference. And I think that is notable. We'll see how the pendulum will swing in either direction, or if the capitalist forces will continue to triumph. But we here will demand for more and advocate for more. Make less things, but make them good. Like, we will show up for them, and we'll drag as many people as we can to the theaters to ensure that they can stay alive. Because it makes such a huge difference. Gosh, what a great film. There's a point where it's probably in like one of the first battle sequences where I'm like, okay, let's go. And I just hear Bong Joon-ho's voice in my head. This is cinema. This is movie magic. And I think what's also really exciting about this movie that I really thought about is how this captivated the masses as well. And to see not just this film do really well and be celebrated for all of these components, but for that to have earned the place that it does in people's minds. Just everyday people that are not movie fans, that like love this IP and felt satisfied to experience a story that really values the best of us, like values humility, a story that values hope and community and doing things together and not alone. It's kind of magical to see the way that movies and films and that movie magic can bring, like, can satisfy us in these ways, and not just the few of us but all of us is really like special to see too. So just the far-reaching impacts of this film beyond just the movie world is, I think, really, really special as well.
Yeah, this movie as like a collective cultural experience is really like, those are getting more and more rare, and this definitely was one where you could make a Lord of the Rings reference and literally like everyone would get it because everyone saw this movie.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. Okay. Any other final thoughts about Lord of the Rings, Return of the King? Parting words.
It made me like further be like, Hobbit, I don't know that, what is that, I don't know her. Like I was just like, because it's like you just look at the contrast between those and you're just like, okay, so this is what happens when this doesn't work, you know. So it's like, it just made me like Lord of the Rings, and that is it. No further information about this world at all, thank you. You know?
Yeah. In your head canon, ain't nothing else exists. Just these three. That's all.
Exactly. It's like, we're good, that's it.
But for a moment, you saw the multiverse strand where all three of these movies could have been like that. And you're like, oh, thank
Totally.
God we're not in those strands. Thank God.
Exactly.
Sarah, what about you? Any other last thoughts about Return of the King?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many, but I also just want to just acknowledge how stacked this cast is.
Yo.
Like, what? Like, even
Yes.
characters in just like some side roles are like such big John Noble, Hugo Weaving, Kate Blanchett, obviously, like these really, really big, incredible actors, and they're only in this. And I know like they're in other movies for longer, but still, like this like side character role. You see Kate Blanchett for like 3 minutes in this movie, and that is like the caliber of talent that they got for this trilogy. And so I feel like while I was watching, I was once again going like, oh my gosh, I forgot that they were in this. Oh, and they're in this. Like, it was just one of those, like the longer that I was watching, the more impressed I was at their ability to just get such incredible talent. So, man, obviously the screenplay that we talked about is fantastic, but then you
So
give
good.
really amazing actors such good quality to work with, then you get something like this. So just wow.
Yeah, trying to pick an
Yes.
MVP is like virtually
Oh,
impossible when you're like,
impossible.
"Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing." And you watch it next scene, you're like, "That's really amazing." It's like, "Oh
Yes.
man, like every single person is fantastic."
Yep.
You're like, dang, yeah, well done, and they all bring it too.
Hmm.
It's so good. There's no one that's like kind of slacking.
Yeah.
My last little shout out is I thought it was so smart and strategic for this film to start the film with Smeagol becoming Gollum. Uh, I didn't know where we would pick up, but I imagine that was also kind of like a, where do we start? Do we just pick up from where we left our friends? And I think to go back to and showcase the power of the ring to start and ground this film, I'm like, this movie started and I was like, oh, duh, I forgot they started this whole movie with that. And genius move, honestly, because everything else makes sense once that lands. But also, for everyone that has like watched this and it's been a couple years or it's been many years, that's grounding for the emotional core of the rest of the story. So, I mean, just shout out to the screenwriters again. Honestly, so impressed. But even those strategic choices of framing this movie that way, genius move. My other last little thing is people be like, oh, Frodo's the hero of the story. No, Sam is the hero of the story. And I love the nod to like ending this entire movie with Sam because he's the best of them all, honestly. Like, Homeboy was about to take the ring for himself. Sam carried him up Mount Doom. That was a long trek, okay? So shout out to Sam. I think he is the true hero of the story, and I love that the film kind of knows it too and is ending with him. So
Totally.
very satisfying to see. All right. Well, this is our review and discussion of Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. I think we gushed about this movie for about an hour, and we could do it for more. But we're gonna end here. You can find this movie available to stream on HBO Max. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us, and a big thank you to Alexis for joining us for this convo about Return of the King. It was a great time.
Love chatting with you. Thank you both so much for having me and for us being able to geek out on this movie that we're like, it's good and earnest and sweet and we love it.
Oh, it was the best. Alexis, where can people find more of you, your movie reviews, you yapping about movies on the interwebs?
You can always find me at trashwire.com, but also I'm Trashwire on Letterboxd. I'm trying to log everything I watch on there and pop a little couple sentences at least. But also I'm Alexis Gentry on Instagram, Trashwire on TikTok. If you look for Trashwire across the things, you can find me in most places.
Love it, love it. We will include all of this links in the show notes, all that goodness. Alexis makes incredible movie review videos, I have to say. It's short, it's punchy, it's meaty, it's funny, it's all packed in there. Y'all gotta check it out. Her takes are really good. All right, well, our name, Movies and Us, sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about this final installment of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky at MoviesAndUsPod, or email us at moviesandUsPod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us. We will be back next week to discuss another potentially sounds like an amazing film, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. I've heard amazing things about this so far, so very excited about it. Hope it lives up to the hype. In the meantime, we hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.